Hello, beautiful souls. You're listening to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancis. Did you know that you can listen to this show everywhere podcasts are found? It's true. Now, I have 3 free gifts just for you. First gift, I give away a new reading each week to a person who's left a 5-star positive review of this show, then submitted it to me using the contact form at theangelmedium.com/contact. I hope I'm calling your number next. Second gift, if you'd like a new daily angel message, join me on Insta at Angel Podcast. Third free gift. If you'd like to know the name of one of your guardian angels so that you can work with them even more closely, go to the homepage of my website, theangelmedium.com, and submit your contact info at the very top. I'll email you back personally with the name of one of your angels. Okay, as we begin the show, I want you to feel the presence of your angels surrounding you. And just know that the loving, positive messages you resonate with today are messages for you from your angels and loved ones on the other side. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancis. And we've got on poet Jacqueline Suskin today. She's got a new book out. It's called A Year in Practice. And Jacqueline, this is going to come out over summer. So maybe we can tune into the summer energies. But I want to start with this. A Year in Practice, I believe, is something that really came to you in a beautiful way. Would you talk to us about how this book kind of naturally came in for you to write?
Yeah, this is my second book with Sounds True. And as a publisher, they tend to put things out in the world that are meant to kind of nurture others and maybe like in the self-help, creativity kind of readers who want to do the work. And so the books that they put out into the world are meant to nurture that process and practice. And after my first book with them came out, which is called Every Day is a Poem, and it's about writing poetry and kind of tuning into having a poetic mindset and practicing being a poet in the world, I was struck with the great opportunity to write another book for them. And I knew I wanted it to be something that was still tied to creative practice, but that was also tied to earth practice and earth-based worship or earth-based experience, people who are interested in the earth or maybe looking to turn towards the earth for guidance. And for me, the earth is my main muse. And so I had a few different angles of how I could kind of go into that, but the seasons were sort of the greatest framework and rhythm that I knew I followed. And I've learned so much about my own creative energy by paying attention to the seasons. So I had a lot of offerings there. And that is what the book is about. A Year in Practice is about just following seasonal and earthly guidance to kind of figure out your creative rhythm, but also just your practice of being alive on planet Earth and remembering to pay attention to those things that are there guiding you that, so many comforts and conveniences in our life, they cause us to forget that. They cause us to forget that the earth is booming its guidance constantly and maybe telling you to slow down when it's wintertime and maybe telling you to, gather up things slowly and carefully when you're coming out in the spring. And then when you're in the summer to be in the sun and be together. And then in fall to kind of start turning inward again. And that practice applies to, I think, so many things. So it's been a really amazing experience to create a book like that for people.
Yeah, I think that was one of my first entryways into spirituality was a friend who was also a colleague, and we were walking from one building to another for a meeting. And she goes, I noticed that you didn't even notice that the flowers were in bloom. And she goes, Julie, look at the flowers. And she goes, and you didn't even hear me, and you just kept talking about work. And so that was really, really interesting. And that was almost 10 years ago. And I've noticed that ever since then, I pause more. And it's really a pausing like throughout the day in different ways to just see life and be with life and to see the tulips and to see the bunny hopping in the yard. And from my office, there's just this ginormous tree that sits across from one of my windows. And I've always had an obsession with some trees, just some trees. It's like an art. They just
Mhm, mhm.
pull at my heartstrings. And I love just the energy of this tree. I wonder if you can kind of talk to us about some of those energies of summer, because one of the other things that I've noticed is we can be so busy. Like my daughter, there's got to be like a TikTok trend happening right now where her and her friend are like, "Can we go to the dollar store? We have to get this like spiral notebook and paint, and we're going to create our summer to-do list." And I started to think about how I've created summer to-do lists in the past and had
Mm.
all of these ideas of all of these things that I wanted to go do and concerts and festivals. And then you kind of miss it. Like
Yeah.
you're just not
Yeah.
with the present sunshine and
Mm.
being outside and enjoyment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just talking about kind of like that busyness and the to do of it all. And that's definitely something that plays a large role in the book, which is this idea of kind of learning how to harness the energy of each season and act accordingly instead of kind of going against it or trying to recreate the wheel. And sort of noticing like, summer is really this like relaxed time, and it is like that for the earth also, because it's already like pushed out all of its flowers, it's already done all of its big growth, and now everything is just sort of soaking in the nutrients, and that's also what we're meant to do. And I think that there can be action that's related to that, and I do think that a lot of the book focuses on rest, but there's also like these actionable ways that we can kind of get in line with what the earth is up to each season. And I think in summer, the actionable things are usually tied to togetherness. So if you want to plan something, hopefully the thing you will plan is just being with the people you love or going and experiencing some kind of, creative output or something like that in togetherness, in community, and then that's it. Like that's enough. Even if going to do the thing is actually just being together and sharing a meal, or just being together and enjoying like music in the park, or whatever it is, all these things that people do in summer are actually tied to togetherness. So I think sometimes we can take the pressure off of it being like this to-do season, when really it's just to be together season and to be in the sunshine and to kind of like restore and soak up the nutrients that then charge you up for fall, which is a very active time, which is a very like, really productive time. And I think that there has to be these like ebbs and flows, and we forget that they exist, and our society doesn't do a very good job of reminding us of that, but the earth does. The earth is constantly reminding us of that. So that the book is basically, the thesis is just like, remember, the earth is telling you exactly what to do. And my hope with all of my work in getting folks to kind of tune into the earth and remember the earth is that, then they will remember to take better care of themselves, and in that they'll take better care of the earth, because the two are wholly combined. And so I'd say that that's like the spiritual aspect of things, is that our creative output and our connection to the planet and to the cosmos then, does create this action and this change. And like, this is what humanity is built on, like responding to these things, responding to the seasons. And I think, if we can kind of help each other out, we need tools to remember these things and to figure out how to get in a little deeper. And I think that's my goal often as a creative person, is just to be, I'm accessing something, I'm taking the time to translate it, and I'm trying to offer it up in the most accessible way possible so that other people can utilize it.
Yeah. So we've already talked about one of those tools because it's awareness, and when you're aware of just the energies of the earth and where the earth is at, you're kind of connected to this constant thread that's grounding you into where you're at right now. What are some of the other tools that you like to use to just be in connection with earth energies?
Well, it's interesting, like that idea of awareness, it takes such incredible practice. Like it's something that can be spoken about, I find, like in a very sort of simple and direct way, but it's often like not very simple or direct to achieve awareness and to be a person who kind of operates within a poetic mindset all day long, because there's so much to distract us from that. So I do think like general practices around like discipline and meditation and repetitive practice, like daily ideal lists of gratitude, these things that are like keeping you tethered to what you believe in or what you would like to be focusing on. And when I turn my focus on the earth in that realm, I feel like if I'm paying attention to the planet, it's constantly telling me something just by being itself.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, so now, the birds are all here. The birds are doing their thing. You cannot deny it. And if you tune into the birds, there's probably some sort of message there for you about the energetics of the day, which is like, if it's raining, if the energy is calm, like they're maybe not singing as hard. They might not be all around your window like they were. And you can kind of pick up on like the little fluency of the earth in this like way that it's working. But I also think that that can be really translated into something really simple, because a lot of people will ask me like, how do you cultivate and keep your connection to the earth for yourself? And I'm like, oh, I just go outside. Like, I don't think that it's actually that easy for people to just go outside sometimes. So I think that the like impetus to kind of instruct folks to go outside and just look around, like every day during my work day, I just take a few minutes to like go outside, no matter what the weather is, just kind of look around, take note of things, breathe in, like feel myself on this spinning planet. And it just helps me with that sense of awareness and presence. It's like I like to call it like a bell of mindfulness. Like if you go outside and then whatever happens is the thing that's kind of connecting you to the current moment. And, no matter what, no matter where you are, even if you're in a city, that moment is earthly because you're on the earth and you are of the earth. You are an earthling. So you and the planet are the same. And I think that that's kind of something that I'm always trying to tap into. And it really can be as easy as just like going out your door and looking around, seeing the sky, seeing a cloud, like taking a deep breath and just remembering like where you are in the grand scheme of things, I think can kind of like drop you into awareness in a pretty direct way. And that's like physical, and it's also like environmental. There's so many different things that are operating in that moment that can nurture that. So
Friends, guess what? We're hosting two live in person events, an in person Angel Reiki School and an in person spiritual retreat. The first event is the weekend of June 1st in Oak Brook, Illinois, where I'm teaching the Angel Reiki School. This is where you get certified in mediumship, angel messages, and energy healing all at once. For a limited time, when you register for the Angel Reiki School in person, you'll also get my 8-week online Angel Reiki School. Visit theangelmedium.com/get certified for details. You'll also find that link in the show notes. It's theangelmedium.com/get certified. The second live in-person event this year is a spiritual retreat, the weekend of October 4th in Oak Brook, Illinois. The spiritual retreat is different in that it's for your own personal growth. The spiritual retreat is all about your own personal healing, your journey, reconnecting with yourself, learning to connect with your angels. And I'm going to talk about all new angels that I've never talked about before anywhere. This spiritual retreat is going to leave you with more personal peace, purpose, clarity, and confidence than ever before. Learn more at theangelmedium.com/retreat. That's theangelmedium.com/retreat. So, just to recap, we have the in person spiritual retreat October 4th for your own personal healing and growth. And the in person Angel Reiki School, June 1st, is where you become a medium, angel messenger, and energy healer all at once. Links to details are in the show notes. I can't wait to meet you and hug you in person. I'm thinking, like, as you're talking, it's making me think about we used to live in a neighborhood about a mile and a half away from where we live now. And in that neighborhood, it was kind of an older neighborhood that just didn't turn over. Like, we were waiting for it to turn over, and we had a younger daughter, and it didn't. And a lot of people were just inside a
Mhm.
lot more. And when we moved to this new neighborhood, everybody's constantly outside, which you were talking about that connection to one another. And as you've been talking, I almost can't separate out the two energies completely of just
Mhm.
being outside, because we're right next to a prairie path that takes you in two different directions to just the most gorgeous parks
Mhm.
in the area. And people are just constantly going for walks, even around the neighborhood. And the dogs are out just walking around. And when you watch the dogs too, they're always so in tune with what's happening, and the squirrels and the bunnies and the birds. And it's fun kind of seeing life through their eyes too.
Mhm.
Um, how, in your year of practice, how did you tune into that ebb and flow of being with the earth and that connection to other people?
Well, I think a piece of what really informed this book, which is important to say, is that I moved from California to Detroit and then wrote the book in Detroit. I started it in California but finished it in Detroit. So I had these very stark 4 solid seasons, and I wrote the book along with each season. And what's interesting about it to me is that I got the idea for the book while living in California, while living in Los Angeles, where a lot of people say there are no seasons. But
Mm.
because the seasons are so subtle there, I really paid attention, as especially as a poet and writing about that place. I was like keyed into every tiny little detail that marked the season. And here in Detroit, a huge mark of the season is that, yes, there are these periods of time where people do not hang out. And it was honestly such a relief to me because I was like, great, I have a break. I have a time
Mm.
of year in the winter where no one expects me to do anything or go anywhere. And we all kind of just hole up for a little while. And the juxtaposition of experiencing like 24/7 every day of the year in California is, you're like, going out. It's nice. It's almost always nice. It's definitely never snowing or below freezing. So you're like, oh, okay. Especially in LA. So I got these juxtaposed kind of sensations of like the importance of a season, and how at this point I'm even like, in the middle of summer and the height of summer, sometimes you need a little bit of that winter energy and you need to like tuck yourself in for a minute to recharge, because summer can be overwhelming if you're seeing people all the time. And so I think there's just these energies to learn from each season. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every season has to be like that from start to finish. It's more just like, here, remember, like as an animal on the planet, you need these rhythms and you can learn them and then you can apply them as you see fit because you're a human. So you have this great gift of choice for whenever you want to like tune into your solitude and go inward. If you're in the middle of the height of summer and suddenly you need to rest and turn off, you can. And if you've paid attention and memorized the way that feels, and know what to do for yourself in those moments, which tools to use. Like for me, I have to go on some sort of retreat every year, even if it's just for a little while, even if it's just in my own home. And I'm telling, my spouse, like, hey, I'm going to do this for a week. I would love to have like a lot of time alone in the house, or I need some space, or I'm going to be in my office. Please just don't interrupt me. And what happens when you choose those things for yourself accordingly, and you've based that information on what the earth has shown you, like you're not alone in it. And that's also something I think that's important. Like you're not arbitrarily making these things up. You're responding to cycles that exist inside your body, and your body is the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Your body is the earth. It's beautiful. So
Mm.
you kind of addressed my next question. I wrote down I have a love-hate relationship with Chicagoland and the Midwest. Um I was talking to my mom the other day, and it's interesting because about a week after I graduated from college, my mom had prepared everything. She was out of here, Illinois, down to Florida. She was just
Mhm.
ready to go.
She's gone.
And my mom and my sibling, asked if I wanted to come with them. And I just felt like my life was here in
Mhm.
Chicagoland. Felt this huge draw to just stay here. And it was a great decision because I met my spouse and we've got this beautiful family, and I love that piece. But now I think, what the hell was wrong with me? Like, I would love to be in the sunshine all day. And it's more so just that seasonal depression, which
Oh,
me, my husband, my daughter, we all have it.
yeah.
For people who are not familiar with the energies of the Midwest, specifically Chicagoland, I say that there's like this cloud that rolls in sometime the beginning of November. And when I say cloud, it blankets the entire sky, right? It's
Yeah.
just this
That's the
where
worst part.
you can't see the sun.
Yeah.
And actually, I was trying to record social media videos in December and January, and I tracked it last year. I got 3 days of sunshine. Those were the only 3 days that
Yeah.
you could see the sky. And that lasts sometimes
For
November,
months.
December, January, February, March, and then sometimes you even get that snow in April, towards the end of
Mhm.
April.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't wanna move. I love where I am, but I wish I had more tools, and I think that that one that you just gave us of, "Hey, it's great to, like, come back inside and not have to see people 24/7 like you do in the sunny states."
Right, like there's a reframing that happens there. But I think to speak on, and I do mention it a few times, the like truth of seasonal depression, and I experienced it this year so hardcore. But I feel like what was fascinating about it to me was the first year when I moved back here, I was just so tired and so happy after moving to not have to do anything. And I didn't really have to go anywhere. I could just like read, study, and write. And that's what I did all winter. And it was awesome. And I was like, this is amazing. I got into a flow. I had an exercise routine. It snowed a lot. So I would
Mm,
go out and walk in the beautiful snow. I think there's a big thing where, when it snows, you get the magic of this white light that reflects. It's so magical to be in the snow.
yeah.
The second year, my second winter, I was writing. I had this book to work on. So I was very focused and I was busy with that and I was totally immersed in it. So I was focused, didn't bother me. This year, the book came out in December. I had to go on a book tour. I didn't get my time of rest at all. I was promoting the book, traveling with the book, working. I was teaching. I was in school teaching. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. It's like, this is not sustainable for me. Whatever this is, it works if I can create my cave, if I actually am afforded a period of rest, which I talk a lot about in the book of like, how do you actualize that, especially in our lives where we are busy and we do have to work and leave the house and go and do stuff all winter long. Like, how do you pull in the energy of hibernation, which is what you really need? And a lot of that involves choice. A lot of it involves being like, I'm actually going to forfeit certain things that are very in high demand in our society in that time of year, which I think culturally is bizarre that we are expected to like go be with our families and travel in the winter.
Yeah.
And I think that this all like directly applies to creative and spiritual practice as well, because we have this opportunity to design our own lives, like even if we're working full time, even if we have these very like modern, family lives, whatever, we can make our own choices. We can build our own way of being. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. I don't want to say actually that any of this is easy, but I do think that there is enough like ritual and there's enough tools for us that have all been documented. Like, this is the thing about where we're at. We have access to all the information, so we could adapt and make choices differently around the truth of like what's happening with the weather. And on huge levels, what's happening with the weather will continue to reflect like what's happening in the world, and there's going to be a lot of struggle around that moving forward. So that was also impetus for me to write this book, where I was like, now's the time for us to tune into this and learn and utilize this natural rhythm that we're part of before we forget that it exists, and then it fully changes and we have no access to it anymore. Like, it's teaching us something. It's been teaching us something. What can we grab onto at the last moment and look at and listen to and learn from, and then like pay our respects to? And I'm really interested in that. And there is an urgency in that, I think.
Yeah. You know, the angels are saying to ask you this, and I think you might be the best person to ask. Do you think it would change anything energetically if we stopped as a country doing daylight savings time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's got to be some kind of shift there. What's that? It's based on
Yeah.
some old way of being. There's
Yeah.
so many things like that. That's my response is like, that is like symbolically an aspect of some way where we're just like stuck as humans. We're just stuck in these old ways that are like woven into like the industrial revolution and like the agriculture systems that are failing us, and all these things that we actually are really being called to like re-envision and rework and remember the ways that they were functional before we got in there and meddled with them for the sake of profit. And so I think like it makes sense to ask about that. It's like a perfect symbol for like this whole kind of reworking that needs to happen, and also a perfect symbol as like it's just a choice. It's arbitrary. Like, we just call that how it is, and we could easily say we're not going to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
it would shift some things, but at this point, the way that the system is built around time and light, I don't actually think it would cause that great of an effect for that not to
Don't
exist
think so
anymore.
either. I don't think so either. And I can say as a Midwesterner who's lived here for almost 30 years, it creates a lot of anxiety and PTSD in people that it's coming, because you just don't want to deal with not having sun at
Mm.
4:20 p.m.
It's a very hard shift. Both of
Yeah.
them, both shifts. It's hard going forward. It's hard going back. It's hard to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a funny concept. And like, now that it's over and we're far past it, I'm just like, oh, right. I forgot that that happened. Cause that's another piece, is like we adapt so quickly. So we forget. And
Yeah.
again, that's like the whole thesis of a year in practice, is like, we have to remember, like, we have to remember, we have to remind each other. We have to consistently practice remembering the greater story here, because
Mhm.
our lives are very busy and we instantly get swept up and lost in the flow of the to-do list. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of like really potent choices that could be made about the way we approach these things that would really change a lot of things for everyone and
Yeah.
for the better.
Yeah. So you're, I'm just going to say, like an earth energy healer, right? Like you're so in tune with the earth. And when I travel out to the west and there are the mountains, I get that just such a great energy from the mountains. When I travel to the beach, oh my
Mhm.
goodness, just being by this huge body of water, even if it's the Great Lakes, because from Chicago, like you
Oh,
cannot
yeah.
see across. It looks like an ocean.
Oh, the
And when
Great
you're
Lakes. Oh my
they're
gosh.
amazing. When you're on the
Yeah.
Michigan side,
Ooh.
it looks some places in Michigan, a lot of places on the beach of Lake Michigan looks exactly like being in Hilton Head or South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia,
Mhm.
just right on the ocean because you cannot see across it. Um, but I'm in a space where you can't see mountains and you can't
Mhm.
see an ocean every day. And I just wonder how you've shifted energetically, not being around the mountains and just having that energy around and being at the plains.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One part of it, I'll start out with the like honest grief of it, is that I feel a large loss not being just able to walk out my door and be part of this landscape that I've grown so familiar with. You know, I've spent a lot of time in Northern California with the redwoods and like deep in the forest. And
Best energies ever.
yeah, like my beloved,
Yeah.
like, and I was born here. I was born in Detroit. So I have a connection to this land that is very childlike. And I remember all of these plants, and the earth is booming here. I think that there's a common conception that, like, in cities in general, that, and I've had this idea, you'll be totally removed from the earth. But even living in LA, I was like, oh my gosh, the plants are, they're fine. They're like, we're good, actually. Like, and there's a lot of work to be done around like restoration and preservation and like cultivating proper species and things like that. And I do think that that's like a callback to, making sure that we remember we are not separate. So our hands are helping hands, like we can do the work of the earth and like nurture the species that need to grow to like not only help preserve the natural habitat of the environment where we live, all of us, but also, to clean the air and to clean the soil and to provide habitat and to, there's so many different like aspects that can come into play for like an actual active relationship with nature. And I really, really feel that way in Detroit. Like this place is not separate from the natural world. It's everywhere you look. It's, there's a lot of work to be done in that way, and I think that that's like kind of what I was looking for, where I was like, oh, in the forest in Humboldt County, I am just, bowing to the throne of the earth there. But here I'm like helping it. We're working together in a totally different way. And I appreciate kind of the challenge of that. To me, it's been like learning a new language. And when I say that I have this childlike connection to it, that's been really important because my kid self fully remembers this earth here. And I'm like, oh, I remember these plants. I know all their names. I never forgot them. They were my friends when I was a child, and they're my friends now. And so there's something in that like has been really hopeful for me, actually, which is like reinforced this sense of, yeah, I'm an earthling, I am planetary, I am of this place. Like it doesn't matter where I live. And honestly, when I moved here, I to leave California was very hard.
Sure.
And I mean, I was not something I really was sure about. But I did always somewhere deep down feel that I would live here again. I just always knew that. And when I was leaving, I hiked out to like my favorite old growth spruce forest, and I was crying and I was kind of singing and praying and I was communing. And these giant trees were like, hey, you can leave California. You don't have to stay. The land needs less people anyway.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of rude, but you're right. It was very much like these like massive grandparent trees were just like, hey, it's okay. Like you can go. We're good here. Like we don't really need so many people, and you've done your task and we'll be here and you can come back whenever you want.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like got schooled by the spruce.
I know, I didn't just hear that, I felt that as you were saying
Mm.
it. That's amazing. Um, so do you have a favorite way of, like, when you're just in nature in general to tap into your own inner wisdom and to tap into the inner wisdom, like you just said, that's flowing to you through nature itself?
I think for the most part, it's a quiet listening and walking through the world as opposed to just sitting and witnessing. I feel like helps me kind of be present with like this rhythm of breathing, and the planet is breathing and I'm breathing and I'm walking in this rhythm, and then there's almost like song that comes from that, and it's very, yeah, I think that like moving through, even here in Detroit, there's a place that I go all the time to walk, and it's by the water, it's beautiful, and just to kind of like have that silent listening time, because I can go there with people and talk about people stuff, and the earth still has things to say. But if I'm quiet and I'm really like practicing listening, I'll probably receive a lot more information. And, a lot of information from the earth in human words is usually like a sentence. So, or like one lyric of a song. Like, so I'll just sing over and over again and kind of repeat whatever I hear or write it down, and always take a little notebook
Mm,
with me. And
awesome. So
yeah.
I have a friend who's just more prone to being in nature. Like she just loves it. I mean, it
Mhm.
feeds her soul and her spirit so much. And we were out last summer walking in the forest preserve I mentioned earlier. And she's talking about tree bathing and tree hugging. And she's like, you're an energy person. Just go up right now and hug that tree. And so I was like, okay, okay. So I go over and I hug the tree, and just the massive wave of energy vibration that you're tuning into. And I'm so familiar with my own vibration that it's very easy to tune into another vibration and feel the separate vibration of the tree, but feel the interconnectedness and the oneness of hugging the tree and just being one with the earth. It was very, very powerful. It was very, very moving. And so I just wondered if you have any insight into tree hugging and tree what do they even call it? Is it tree bathing or
Forest bathing, I
for
think you
the forest
mean,
bathing? Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there's something, yeah, that I find very important when these conversations come up around like communing with and receiving the energy of the planet, whether it be from flowers or trees or water or whatever it is. I think that sometimes people can have a little bit of hesitation where they're like, I don't know, is this like me, like just kind of making this up? Is this my imagination, or am I intuitively aligned? And I have a friend, Natalie Ross. She's an incredible earth worshiper, and we were talking about this, and she was like, oh, well, there's no difference between your imagination and your intuition. That's the same thing.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
whatever you hear or feel inside of yourself in these moments, even if you are actually pushing yourself to make it up, it's the same.
Yeah.
There's no difference between it. What you hear within yourself in your imagination, whether it's prompted, whether you're practicing it, or whether you just kind of naturally step into this flow of feeling that connection. Either way, it's the same thing. There's no restriction there. And I think that's important for people to remember, because I do think people get hung up on this, like, oh, I'm just sort of like making up the fact that this plant is saying something to me. And I'm like, yeah, so what? Like, what's
Yeah.
the difference? Like, go ahead, make it up. Like, I mean, that's what I'm doing as a poet, and I consider it to be, channeling and translating and all of these things. But to me, that's also the same as whatever's coming from, you know, inside my vessel, because I am of this, cosmos. So I'm like, whatever it's telling me is what it's offering. And I think that's why cultivating your creativity and trying to cultivate your imagination, I think that's why that's so important,
Yeah.
because it's really like we are only as limited as we feel we are in that sense. And it's
Mhm.
amazing to remember that you can cultivate it and nurture it. Like, it can grow and expand. So that means then your experience of receiving these messages or feelings or vibrations, or however you want to describe it, like that also expands as you expand your practice of your imagination or your creative ability.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Um, Gosh, there's so many different ways I wanna go, but, one of the things that's just come into mind to say is that I did a TED Talk recently, and as I was doing that TED Talk, the committee really prepares you for it, and what they suggest to all speakers is really putting in as much scientific data as you can find, and there is a ton of scientific data on being in front of water and, like,
Mhm.
what it actually does to your
On a
nervous system.
cellular level, yeah, and
Yes.
yeah, mhm.
And I mean, there has to be that type of there is that type of information too for just being in nature. And like when
Mhm.
you're in nature, it resets your system. So it for my dad, he was that outside person too. And the only way that I can describe it is like we've got two little Shih Tzus, right?
Mhm.
And Fluff is an indoor dog. Like he could be in all the time. If he has to go outside, he will, and he'll sniff around every once in a while, but he has his happy place inside. Lulu can be outside 24/7. It could be hotter than hell outside. It can be snowy, and her little teeny tiny body is like traipsing through 3 feet of snow and she's getting all matted underneath. But she doesn't want to come in
Yeah.
ever. Like, I have to go out at night and hunt her down and, like, bring her in because she would be
Mhm.
out so long. And I think there are a lot of humans who are that way too, like one or the other. I'm more like Fluff, where you have to pull me outside, but my dad loved being outside. Like, that was where spirit spoke to him. Like, he'd just go sit and fish, and that was his meditation. We were walking past a golf course the other day, and my daughter and I were talking. I was like, just so you know, men's form of meditating sometimes is being on a golf course because they can be silent and quiet and in a
Yeah,
beautiful,
and they're
like,
outside,
nature.
yeah,
Yeah,
mhm, they're
but
focused, yeah.
it is. It is church for so many people. Maybe it is
Mhm.
the original church, nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think that's what's up. It's like Garden of Eden vibes, that's the feeling is. And I think I like to circle back to that, like, indoor outdoor cat or indoor outdoor dog, because
Yeah,
my friends and I would talk about that. Like, I have a friend who calls himself, he's like, I'm an outside cat. Like, he doesn't really want to be in a house ever.
yeah,
Wants to be in the garden. He wants to be in the forest. He doesn't want to be inside. And I'm like that too. Yet I work a job that often asks me to be at a desk or inside. I can do some of my writing outside, but I'm, doing a podcast, or I'm writing emails, or I'm running, what is actually like a full-time small business to be a writer. So I have to like schedule in all my outside time, or my whole self just kind of takes a dive. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, why don't I work a job that has me outside all the time? Because I am an outside cat. So why am I doing this? But I think there's like inherent lessons in kind of like straddling both worlds, because that's what we do as humans. Like, mostly because of the weather in a lot of places, we've created all these infrastructures for us to like be comfortable indoors. And I think that there's a point in the book where I mentioned that, where I'm just like, yeah, these comforts, they're incredible. And like, we can call them progress, you know, but actually they've like, in a lot of ways, removed us from our very natural and easeful connection with the outdoors. Like, people have a lot of hang-ups about being connected to the earth because of bugs or because of the weather or because, you know, certain things that when we were our just animal selves, those things weren't even, you know, I mean, sure, they made us uncomfortable, but I think like that level of discomfort can sometimes actually offer a lot. Like, a lot of innovation and ingenuity comes from moments of discomfort. And so I think sometimes like we keep ourselves from that a little too much. And then we're not asking ourselves to like be in that place of innovation, which is really crucial for our growth.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm more of an indoor cat by nature, but I had this conscious evolution that spirit was walking me on a couple of years ago, where I noticed that every day when my husband would get home, he would say, "You want to take the dogs for a walk?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't want to go outside. No." And I just kept saying, "No, no, 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 no." And spirit just kind of made me more and more conscious that I was saying no every
Mhm.
single time to not taking a walk. And spirit just said, and I could hear the garage door going up. He just got home while we were filming this, and he's taking them for a walk right now. Spirit said, every time he asks you, you have to say yes for the next year. So I did. And I
Yeah.
started getting outside and I started to feel better. Like my
Yeah.
back didn't ache as much and I was
Yeah.
starting to stretch out and
Yeah.
just being in nature just reset a lot of things. So I would come back to my work and just be ready to go or like hop into a project. But it was a conscious evolution of my friend saying, "Hey, you're not noticing the flowers," to me noticing that I wasn't going on walks with my spouse,
Yeah.
to really enjoying, I would say, movement and actually enjoying being outside.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay for us indoor cats. Like,
It takes practice. I mean,
yeah,
I really think that like most great things take practice, and the reasoning behind that, the need for that practice, is complex. You know, like, humans, we're up against a lot, so for us to like need to practice remembering our connection to the earth, it's like clunky sometimes, and we have to find our own way with it. And so that's a big part of this book, is that it's not a prescriptive book. It's not like you do A and B and then you get C. It's like you try on these different things at these different times of years in your own way. Here are examples how I have done that, or other people I know who have done it and it's worked for them. Maybe you want to tweak it like this, or your own way that I haven't thought of because I'm not you, but it would like give you a spark of information or let you kind of just be open to it. And that's why I do think that like the importance of like communicating about these things, like having a podcast or writing a book or just like trying to like put the information out there in the world, it's important we all do stuff like that, because who knows how you get the information, who knows how the tool falls into your lap. What matters is that you utilize it. Like, that's what matters. And like, that's the practice. Like, you keep showing up and trying, you find a different way and try on a different hat and a different method. And I think like a lot of times, I think people want results to be really fast.
mhm,
And sometimes they are, you know, sometimes you can receive a message and try it on for size and you are shifted and everything's transformed. But most of the time, it takes a season of effort. And I think that like there's a lot of beauty in that. And that when we rush through things, it's never a good idea. No rushing, no grasping, just like receiving and then carefully experimenting. And I think that's what we're here to do, really.
amazing, amazing. Oh, I know we've covered so much, but is there anything else that Spirit has got on your heart to just share about all of these beautiful topics with our listeners?
Well, I always like to just remind people to read poetry and to engage with poetry because poetry is like this direct portal to touching depth and spirit in like a very concise way. And I do think that it's like very crucial piece of this toolkit for our times because we don't have a lot of time and there is a lot of urgency. So, like, receiving these deeper messages and then also like letting them live inside of you or creating them yourself, like, you don't have to be with your pen to the paper to be a poet. You can let poems flow through you all the time. And doing that takes practice also. But I think like reading and engaging with poetry and then trying to write it is this really powerful transformative tool. And I always like to remind people of that. I'm like, remember the earth and then remember poetry and practice your, however you want to connect to those things. And I think a lot of other pieces of your life touch that. So it's an all-encompassing kind of gesture to say, like, here, poetry lives inside of you. You can access it. It's all around you all the time. It's a mindset. It's not necessarily even like a practice that has to be outcome oriented.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, connecting with the earth and finding your way to like do it every single day, even if it's really small, and just remembering to kind of note the information that you receive.
I've never thought of poetry as messages from spirit, but as I've been just in your energy and talking to you today, that's what it is. It's mini messages, deep messages
Mhm.
from spirit.
Yeah. Should I read a
Ooh.
poem to close us out?
Yes, please
Okay, I'll
do.
I'll
Please
just
do.
randomly find one.
Oh, yes.
This is good. This is in the summer section. The poem is called Jade, like the plant. The roots of the jade clippings have been growing since last August, almost a year, and they thick up the jars as shocks of hair, clumps of mane. I found the mother plant on a hillside, big body drooping downward, her weight carving out a cave of shade below. She sang for me to harvest her. I scooped her lengths and cut at the knuckles, dropping swollen stems into the cup of my shirt. I drove across town and stroked the petals until, back in my kitchen, I gave each stalk wet residence. I sat back to watch what life would make of itself.
Mm. You can feel the energy moving through the words.
Mhm.
Amazing. Jacqueline, your book, A Year in Practice, is out now. Tell everybody where they can find that and where they can find you, and put those in the show notes below.
Yeah, you can find the book anywhere you buy your books. It's very readily available. A Year in Practice, published by Sounds True. And then I have a Substack. I do monthly newsletter and a monthly paid subscription piece. And I also use Instagram for kind of just updates and sharing poems. So you can find me there
Where are you on Instagram?
at J Suskin, Suskin. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Love your energy.
Thank you.
Of course. Friends, I need your help reaching as many people as possible. If you'd like to support this podcast and help us spread more hope to the world, please book a session with me, join my angel membership, or take my angel Reiki school. What's the difference? If you'd like to know what messages your angels and loved ones have for you, you'll want to book a session with me. The angel membership is all about your own personal spiritual healing. The membership takes you on a spiritual journey that teaches you how to create your own heaven on earth. And the Angel Reiki School is for those who want to get certified in mediumship, angel messages, and energy healing all at once. These are 3 ways you can help us share a message of hope and love with more people than ever before. Register for one or all three at theangelmedium.com. That's theangelmedium.com. Now, let's pray together. As we do, I want you to pray in a way where you feel as though everything you want for yourself and the world has already come true, and you're giving thanks. Why? Because this is the best way to manifest. So let's begin. God, universe, source, thank you. We're so grateful that you've blessed this world with calm and peace for all. This calm and peace has spread like ripples, soothing the hearts of every soul. Thank you for opening our hearts to abundance, allowing each of us to live our most authentic life, and helping us to create our own heaven on earth. We thank you for the love and deep heart-to-heart connection that surrounds us every day in our relationships. We thank you for the abundance of health and aliveness we feel radiating from every cell in our and our families' bodies. Thank you for the gift of walking this life with us and guiding us every step of the way through your messages. We hear you through our own intuition, and we feel you walking right by our sides, and we overflow with gratitude. Thank you for financial abundance, an abundance of opportunities and miracles, blessings, and prosperity in every way. We know that you want us to succeed so that we can show others how you want them to succeed too. Thank you for the boundless love, kindness, empathy, and compassion that binds us all together. Thank you for the laughter, fun, moments of pure delight that fill us every day, especially today. God, universe, source, thank you for blessing us beyond measure and allowing us to use our souls, gifts, talents, skills, and abilities to serve the world. We love you. I love you. And in this we pray. Amen. Friends, we're working on some pretty major things over here. And if you wouldn't mind saying a little prayer that these things come to fruition if they're God's will, we'd so appreciate it. And please add a little prayer in for any specific thing you need right now, too. Have a beautiful, blessed day. And don't forget to submit your contact info at theangelmedium.com if you'd like me to channel the name of one of your angels for you. Sending you peace, bliss, and many blessings.